Finance and Policy Committee to order. Today is Thursday, March 26th, 2026, and the quorum is present. Rep. Weiner, would you like to move the minutes from March 24th? Rep. Weiner moves the March 24th minutes. As are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all of those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion prevails and minutes are approved. The first bill on the agenda is House File 4308. Chair Swedzinski, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, I move that House File 4308 be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes.
Chair Swedzinski moves the House File 4308 be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes. Chair Swedzinski, would you like to move the A1 amendment at this time?
Yes, I would, Chair Murphy. I would like to move the A1 amendment to get the bill and the next amendment as well to get in the bill in the shape I would like.
Chair Swedzinski moves the A1 amendment to get the bill in the shape he would like. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Chair Swedzinski, would you like to move the A2 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to move the A2 amendment to again get the bill in the shape that I would like.
Chair Swedzinski, please tell us about House File 4308.
No, we're not quite there yet.
Oh, and all in favor of the A2 amendment?
Oh,
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm cool with an amendment to, it's on. Thank you. I'm cool with an amendment to put it in the form you want, but this is the second one?
Yes.
Can maybe you explain this a little bit?
Sure. That's one clarifies some of the work that we're doing in the sales tax provisions.
And what?
For the sales tax provisions.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the A2 amendment? All in favor? Representative Kraft?
Yeah. I'd actually ask House Research, maybe you could just describe what's happening with this.
Mr. Chair, Representative Kraft, current statute allows no sales taxes for heating fuels for residential customers from the months of November through April. This amendment would allow no sales tax on any fuels used for residential throughout the year.
Thank you.
Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So do we have a fiscal note describing what that would be? Revenue note?
No, the bill is going to taxes, so
Yep.
that'll be its next stop.
Yes.
Chair Swedzinski?
Yes, we have some rough numbers, but you know we do have some fiscals being looked at from a generation side, but I believe it's in that roughly a 100 million range.
Chair Kraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't like that impact. Does Chair Acom have a comment?
Chair Acom?
Thank you. I was just going to say, as a fiscal committee, I think having the fiscal note and having the conversation on the fiscal impacts of this bill is important. And so if there are rough estimates or information that would be helpful for our discussion, it would be helpful if you could disseminate that.
Chair Swedzinski?
Sure. I mean, we'd be happy to share our back of the napkin numbers with the committee, and that's about where they're at roughly. Yeah, we do have a fiscal note being requested, and because those are tax provisions, we felt that it would be best because they're tax code. We'd look at those within the tax committee. That's why we made the referral to that.
Any further discussion on the A2 amendment? Representative Kraft?
I'll say thank you for the information. I don't think I support this, but I'm happy to let you have the bill in the form that you want it.
Thank you. With that being said, all in favor of the A2 amendment, please show your sign by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The A2 passes. Chair Swedzinski, please tell us about House File 4308.
Certainly. So, you know, we've House File 4308 is a major attempt at really fleshing out the issues of savings when it comes to utility rates in the state of Minnesota. We've had this conversation throughout session, throughout last year and the years before, about, what can we do to impact utility rates around the state. Just last week, earlier in this week, we heard a bill that talked about interest rates and interim rates and the dollars that would save. And we really want to open up that conversation to say, how can we dramatically impact the costs, and what costs and what taxes, and how do taxes foundationally affect the cost of energy, and how do mandates do the same thing? And so, oftentimes when we talk about fiscal notes, we talk about the relationship between state government and spending, but I'd say in this area particularly, the actions that we as a legislature take also have an impact when we're dictating spending or dictating cost increase through utilities. And the unique business model that most utilities operate here in the state of Minnesota is their captured space. And so essentially you have monopolies operating at the will of government within different units of whether it's a municipality, or it's a rural electric, whether it's an investor-owned utility. And the actions that we take here at the legislature can dramatically change the cost of electricity. And that's what House File 4308 does. And the amendments, as included, will potentially, on our back of the napkin cost estimate, this bill as passed, if we pass it through committee, move it through taxes, and ultimately onto the House floor, will save ratepayers billions of dollars. Not millions, billions of dollars. And, our goal as the legislature, in the world of a 2040 mandate throughout the state can get out of the way. And we've said this before, we've said it again, what is our role here as lawmakers when it comes to dictating to utilities the cost of electricity by charging ratepayers? We can say that these taxes are going to get investors or out-of-state investors, but at the end of the day, the cost of doing business in the state of Minnesota is passed on to consumers. And so whether that's property tax rates, whether it's real property tax, whether it's sales tax, those taxes are ultimately paid by the businesses, the daycares, the schools, the people that we all represent. And just to kind of give a general rundown of the different sections of the bill, if I could maybe have nonpartisan staff, maybe Bob, Mr. Eloff could just run through just a blanket on the bill to go through each section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Eiler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Chair. I'll run through the sections of the bill as introduced. We've already heard about the A2 amendment. I think Chair Swedzinski would probably like to talk to the A1 amendment. But looking at the bill as introduced, Section 1, currently the Monticello nuclear plant is required to pay annually into the Renewable Development Account $350,000 each year for each dry cask containing spent fuel that is stored there. This bill would eliminate that requirement, and it would also eliminate a requirement for once the Monticello plant is shut down, if the waste is still there right now, the statute requires payment of $5.25 million each year, and this bill would eliminate that as well. Section 2 on page 6 of the bill, distributed solar energy standard. Currently, public utilities with at least 200,000 retail electric consumers in Minnesota are required to have at least 3% of their retail electric energy sales in the state come from solar energy that is from projects which are 10 megawatts or less and that were constructed or the energy was procured after August 1, 2023. This bill, lines 718 through 727 on page 7, would exempt the public utility with 200,000 retail electric customers from that under two conditions. One's that the bids, the competitive bids under which these projects are purchased is actually more than 50% higher than the utility's current average levelized cost of solar energy for their Minnesota system. And secondly, that the public utility demonstrates to the Public Utilities Commission that more than 3% of their current retail electricity sales are generated by solar energy systems below 10 megawatts, but that have not undergone a competitive bidding process. I think we'll hear more on that from one of our testifiers later today. Section 3 at the bottom of page 7 and Section 4 on page 8 are in tandem. Essentially, Section 4 takes the definition on line 828, utility, real and personal property for gas and electricity utilities. That definition is removed from the definition of tax capacity, and it's tax capacity on which the state general level for commercial and industrial property is taxed. So what this bill effectively does is remove commercial industrial property taxes. And you'll see at the top of page 8, lines 1 and 2, that the calculation was done as to what that would mean, a reduction of statewide $90 million in property taxes. And finally, Section 5, we've already discussed that. This would allow for the elimination of sales taxes on all residential energy use.
Thank you, Mr. Iloff. Any questions for Mr. Iloff? Chair Swedzinski?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we have some testifiers that might like to speak to the bill, and
Thank you. I've got 2 testifiers on the list. Could Jim Pearson come up, Director of Regional Government Affairs with Xcel Energy, and Patty O'Keefe, if you could be ready, Regional Director of Midwest of Vote Solar.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
As the testifiers are getting situated, maybe as Mr. Iloff had indicated, could you take a moment to tell us a little bit about the A1?
certainly. So the, let me pull it back out. So the A1 amendment is, primarily focused on a bill to repeat the SIP savings goals, because in conversations with some of the utilities, they felt that we could replace them, but they would probably be doing them anyway, and so that we're removing that portion of the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. So now we'll hear from Jim Pearson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Jim Pearson with Xcel Energy. Appreciate the opportunity to talk and provide some additional context around 2 sections of the bill. The first section is Section 1 and the RDA. The Renewable Development Account has a really important history that dates back to 1994. And I want to be clear, Xcel Energy does not support any changes that would impact cask fees associated with our facility at Prairie Island. However, beginning in about 2003, the legislature has made many changes to the RDA over the last 20-plus years. And it's this section, Section 1, really talks to a change that was made by the legislature in 2007. That was the year that the legislature began to require the company to start collecting $350,000 per cask for every dry cask storage container that we had in Monticello. Today, the cask fees that we collect from our customers at the 2 facilities exceed $40 million a year. And the proposed change by eliminating the cask fees that were imposed in 2007 would result in about a $10.5 million savings to our customers. We still would be collecting obviously in the excess of $30 million, but there is some savings with that particular provision. And that number would increase to about $15 million in savings by 2028. That is a year that we project additional casks will be put in dry storage in Monticello. So I just wanted to provide the committee with that context around the first provision of the bill. The second provision that I wanted to speak to is the suggested changes to the distributed energy solar standard. This was a provision that was incorporated and part of the Energy Omnibus Bill in 2023, and at the time, we supported the provision. What we have found since then is that the market conditions have really dramatically changed. And so as we work to fulfill that mandate, we're finding market prices for a variety of reasons have really changed. And so the idea here is to be respectful of the law that was passed in 2023. Again, we have right now about 6% of our sales coming from distributed solar. So certainly from an intent, we see that and recognize that. At the same time, if we have some flexibility in when we acquire that, than there is potential savings to our customers year over year. So for Xcel Energy, that savings based on current market prices compared to the levelized cost of energy for solar that we currently have on our system, if you just look at that delta, we're looking at about $40 million of potential savings if we were to acquire all of that now versus waiting. Now, no guarantee that if we waited 2 years, 3 years, what have you, that market conditions would change. But again, the intent of the language is just to provide some flexibility so that we, as we work to fulfill the mandate, that we're not put in the position of being price takers. And so the language is a little complicated. I know I've had a chance to work with Mr. Eloff on trying to figure that out a little bit. I'm sure if the bill moves forward, we will have more conversation, but I wanted to share the intent of Section 2. The last thing I'll say to the bill, I didn't have this in my prepared remarks, but I see the amendment going on the bill. That is obviously creates some concern for us. I haven't had a chance to look at the A1 in a lot of detail, but I do want to say that, from an Xcel Energy perspective, our conservation and improvement and eco programs are really important. They, all of those programs go through cost tests to determine the effectiveness. So I think there's a good and a long history of making sure that programs that utilities are offering are a good value. And the other piece of that I'd point out too is those programs, rebates and the like, really is another tool that we offer customers to help them control their bills. And so there's an affordability aspect too. So again, as the bill moves forward, we'd love to continue to talk to Chair Swedzinski and others about that provision. But again, not having spent a lot of time with it, we do have some initial concerns. So with that, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I have a couple of questions. Representative Jones is online, and she has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll save my questions until we get to the general bill conversation.
All right. We have another person, a representative that raised her hand as a question. Is your question for the testifier or on the bill, Representative Lugar-Nicolai? Okay. Thank you. The next testifier we have is Patty O'Keefe, Regional Director, Midwest Vote Solar. Please proceed with your testimony and please give your name for the record.
Thank you. Hello, members of the committee. My name is Patty O'Keefe. I am the Regional Director for the Midwest with Vote Solar. Vote Solar does oppose this bill, House File 4308, because we believe it weakens Minnesota's distributed solar energy standard at precisely the wrong time. As electricity demand grows, driven by electrification, data centers, economic development, we should be expanding and not retreating from the tools that help us meet our clean energy goals. The distributed solar standard was part of a recent compromise to test whether utilities could deliver these resources efficiently, and we are still in the early stages of implementation. It's simply too soon to declare the program unworkable or to create opt-outs. Distributed solar adds capacity close to where the energy is used. It reduces strain on the system, and it avoids the massive inefficiencies of traditional generation where much of the energy is lost before it even reaches customers. Cost comparisons based only on generation can be misleading because they don't reflect the full system benefits of distributed resources or the additional infrastructure costs of utility scale projects. If we're serious about meeting our clean energy targets while managing load growth, we need stable, predictable policy, not carve-outs that make the standard optional for our state's largest utilities. And then I also want to say that we're concerned about the elimination of payments from the Monticello plant into the RDA. The RDA was created after plans to move the waste to a federal repository. That never happened. It never materialized. What was always meant to be temporary has effectively become permanent. The waste now sits right alongside the Mississippi River, the river that provides irrigation and drinking water for a massive swath of the country and adjacent to the Prairie Island Indian community. In exchange for the risk that the waste brings to the tribe and the people across our state, not to mention the country. We got the agreement for Excel to pay into the RDA, and it's now a critical source of funding for innovation, grid modernization, and clean projects that help meet our energy demands without putting people at serious risk. For these reasons, we ask you to reject the bill today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Keefe. Is there anyone from the public that would also like to testify on House File 4308? Please note that written testimony in members' materials regarding House File 4308. Are there any questions for the bill author? Testifier? Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for this. I have a question, I think, for one of the testifiers, for Mr. Pearson, on the point around the concern with the distributed standard. And I may also need some clarification from House Research, but if I'm reading the bill, there is a clause in the underlying statute F that says the commission may modify or delay the implementation of the standard established under this subdivision in accordance with the provisions of subdivision 2B. So again, isn't there already a path then to get relief in this? And if not, how am I misreading this?
Mr. Pearson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Kraft, I'm not sure you are misreading it. I think arguably there is a path. However, I guess from our perspective, this is touching on a bill that was recently passed just a couple of years ago, right? And so I think, I think we wanted to really raise this issue with you as a committee. I think, working with members along the line, this is an important issue. And I think bringing this discussion into this forum is really important. And that was our choice. I guess, thinking about it, you're not wrong. I think we maybe could have pursued a different route. I thought in this particular case, being a little bit more transparent about what we're seeing in the market and raising the issue with members would be an important thing to do. And so this is an initiative that we wanted to bring forward to the committee.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that, Mr. Pearson. I'm a big fan of transparency, so I appreciate that. If this was the underlying statute, the underlying bill that was passed, I would say that then we as a body put in place a mechanism for you to deal with these kinds of issues, and that would have been, the intent of this. So, if these are things you're running into that are uneconomical and things like that, then I'm not sure that I'm for going and tweaking a statute when there's already a mechanism in there for relief.
Thank you, Representative Kraft. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Swedzinski, for the opportunity to speak on this. So I have a couple of questions. First, just to start, just kind of starting high level, just what is the cheapest kilowatt hour that's available?
Chair Swedzinski.
Energy that you don't use.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Swedzinski. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about that. Because I have a secondary question. What impact does improved energy efficiency have on consumption of energy? Does it cause energy use to go up or down?
Chair Swedzinski.
It depends if you're developing new businesses or not. Are you saying in general or for like an individual ratepayer?
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Swedzinski. So if you improve the energy efficiency of a piece of equipment, what does that do to the consumption of energy? Does the energy consumption go up or down?
Chair Swedzinski.
It would potentially go down.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Swedzinski. Yeah, so I'm glad we agree on those things. And I wanted to set that tone because, since our utility bills are structured such that a major component is the cost per unit of energy, if we use fewer kilowatt hours, our bills will go down. And so it makes sense that if we make investments in energy efficiency, the operational costs will go down for businesses and homeowners. And And so we need to look at both sides of this equation, right? So looking at the costs and benefits. So I have another question, and I don't need high degree of accuracy on this, but what is the cost to buy or consume a kilowatt hour of electricity in Minnesota?
Chair
Just kind of
Swedzinski.
generally.
Chair Swedzinski.
Well, it depends on, so some energy might be 4 cents, some energy might be 12 cents, some energy might be 14 cents.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Swedzinski for that. Yeah, so generally for at least residents and businesses, you know, so if we leave out industrial in particular, yeah, it's kind of in the 12 to 14 cents range. So that's the cost of a kilowatt hour of electricity. For investing in energy efficiency, it only costs 2 cents. So we're making a really affordable investment to reduce the total kilowatt hours that we need, and it's really affordable to do that. And when we do that investment, we're actually just lowering the total kilowatt hours that we need in the system. And we've all agreed that the one we don't use is the cheapest. So the same logic applies for gas as well. So we really should be thinking about energy efficiency as a resource, like gas, wind, solar, nuclear. It's a resource. Energy efficiency is a resource for our system. And in fact, if you make that comparison, it accounts for 14% of our energy demand. This is a really important tool for us to address affordability. When adopted in 2021, the bipartisan ECO bill was one of the few topics to be successful in the split legislature. ECO and its predecessor, SIP, the Conservation Improvement Program, is a nation-leading program that has been successful in reducing household and business utility bills for years. And in fact, ECO generates nearly $5 in benefits for Minnesota for every $1 invested. So if we truly care about affordability, we need to look at this data. And this data shows that from a cost-benefit perspective, ECO has tremendous benefit for Minnesotans. The inclusion of this provision to kill ECO among a number of other provisions prevents me from being able to support this bill.
Representative Lugar Nikolai.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Mr. Chair, also. I have questions that are, I think, slightly adjacent to Representative Jones, which is that related to the fact that energy usage overall is largely, the demand is relatively inelastic, other than when, for example, our fossil fuel access is strangled by a war of choice, or we have available energy efficiency or alternative energies. But over time, overall, the demand is relatively flat. And so the question I have is, this policy choice, which reduces energy costs at sort of a marginal value to all owners, or to all energy users, seems to miss the fact that we have a number of users in the state of Minnesota for whom the elasticity has gone. They are behind on their bills. We have an energy assistance program. Rather than a tax expenditure of hundreds of millions of dollars, which we're not entirely sure what that dollar amount is, why are we not looking at plugging resources into energy assistance programs that would, in fact, actually get our power companies more of their money back for individuals who aren't currently paying for power?
Chair Swedzinski.
Well, I think, that's a dynamic way to put that. When you're talking about, we've heard that in front of this committee a few times, that, our residential rates aren't as high as others in other parts of the country. And so, but when we're looking at what we really can do, so, just like on Tuesday, we had a bill in front of us that would potentially save ratepayers $5 or $70 over multiple rate cases. And that was a bill worth moving forward. And this is a bill that would also do, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, save ratepayers across. And while you can target through energy programs to help subsidize energy costs, the fact of the matter is we do still have some of the highest industrial rates in the country. And while you did say, our energy use has been flat over the last 15 years or so, that is going to change. When it comes to the fourth industrial revolution that we're right in the thick of, with AI, data centers, the construction of those things from an intrastate standpoint, the demands upon the grid are going to be vastly different. When you talk about inelasticity when it comes to consumption, when you're talking about large industrial consumers and users, those are things that we need to start addressing and looking at, because while the costs have while consumption has remained flat, we are beginning in that cusp where that will be generally increasing. And while we're not necessarily arguing against that SIP has not been good, but we also can say that if something is the cheapest, and we've made that point before with this, with solar power and mandating it, or SIP and mandating it, we've told over and over and over, whether it's wind or solar or SIP, it's the cheapest energy, whether it's energy you don't use or energy that does not have a fuel cost, is the cheapest. And my argument to this committee is then, if it is the cheapest, I'm a free market capitalist. Will the market dictate that? Right? If you are the energy buyer, if you're the utility, will you not pursue what is best when it comes to fuel cost? Will you not pursue what it is best savings? And what will you do? And if we can start moving away from a St. Paul knows best perspective, right? We're saying we're protecting, but we also need to be thinking about how do we grow? If we're going to be growing an economy, if we're going to be playing a part in the international race to AI and AI generalization and data centers, we need to dramatically change our focus on what the amount of energy we're going to be producing, how we're going to transform it, and then how do we place those things in our communities. And that is a change. If you were Detroit in the early 1900s, there were probably someone that didn't want the auto manufacturers building their factory in their backyard either. But that is what countries do. You're either moving forward and growing, or you are falling behind. If everybody remember what was going on in Wuhan a few years back in China, that is a post-industrial city that we have all heard about when it came to COVID and the potential for its dissemination of COVID. But what are they doing there now? They're taking that same industrial capacity, those energy centers that they've had in the past, and they are expanding generally the data and data center construction and then the ultimate consumption of electricity to do the work of the next superpower. And so I think that's how we generally need to be looking at it, because we're going to be in a world where we need to build out systems. We're in a world that we need to grow more generation. And we need to get ourselves out of the way so that when new generation comes online, that we're not simply adding to the cost of energy by taxing the property, taxing the energy, and then also mandating extra cost to consumers by dictating to utilities how to do it.
Representative Buck.
I think, you have a follow-up?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
Yep. What's that?
Dynamic. I appreciate that very
You're
much.
welcome.
Secondly, I just want to I just want to drill down, because I think what we're talking about, or what I hear in your answer, is that we are on the cusp or in the middle of this revolution. And what I will say that from my perspective, I see that revolution replaces humans in a lot of respect and human effort. I don't know that I necessarily think that it has replaced energy usage, although I think we've seen some projects that have leveraged some of the developments that the RDA fund, for example, would spur, or MNCEFA would also help to promote. So I think that we're missing an opportunity if we're diverting resources away from things that might actually help to generate some of the technology that you think may take us into a new generation. And I don't necessarily think that is a St. Paul knows best, although being from St. Paul, I'm going to actually probably take that one. And I do think that there is a pretty significant kind of clash of civilizations on the policy analysis here.
Thank you. Representative Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Swedzinski. Okay, I'm trying to collect my thoughts, so apologies. I'm hangry, I'm starving, and I have a lot of questions I'm trying to formulate here. First, where's this bill going? I'm sorry I was late coming in. Are we laying it over, or is it going somewhere?
This bill is on its way to taxes.
Thank you. So with that, let's see. Where is the money for these casks currently going?
Representative Swedzinski.
All the money for the CAS is currently going into the RDA fund.
Perfect.
Representative Buck.
Thank you. And with the RDA fund, there are projects, renewable energy projects that are created like the Prairie Island Net Zero program, as well as research. Those projects and research that are created or worked on from the RDA funds actually creates jobs. I know at Prairie Island, with our Net Zero project and the funds we got from the RDA for that, we were able to create jobs. A lot of jobs for our people that are still working in that area. Some of our younger generations who worked on that program or that project have since stayed in that field. So I think the RDA fund does a lot of good, obviously on the base of it, but also the jobs that it helps create. So I think taking money away from that is very dangerous. Also, is there a place in the bill, and I may be missing it, but is there a place in the bill that guarantees that taking this away is going to reduce the rates? Or is this just an assumption that you think it's going to happen because Xcel will no longer have to pay this money in, and in theory, that means reduction of rates?
Chair Swedzinski.
Representative Buck, Chair Murphy, obviously, whenever you take a rate case or talk about your costs in front of the PUC, all those things are in the consideration. So, as we would like to say, when it comes to nuclear generation of energy in the state, those costs, right, whether it's you're buying nuclear fuel or you're using the cost perspective of spending money to the RDA, those are all marked dollars. It would be my assumption, that would be the general assumption of the PUC, that would be returned to ratepayers or not taken from ratepayers to begin with.
Representative Buck.
Okay. For me, this is really hard to accept. And as someone who lived less than 700 yards from a nuclear power plant and the dry waste storage unit, and knowing the effects of such a thing, what it has on our people and visitors that come to our reservation, I have a problem with this because the way I look at it, it takes away or eliminates the company's responsibility to those casks and creating that waste. And I know that the Prairie Island, I know we're talking about Monticello, but I know the Prairie Island Indian community bears the burden of this entire region with those dry cast storage units full of spent nuclear fuel, less than 700 yards. We are the closest community in the entire nation. And to take away the responsibility that the company has to cask, even at Monticello, I think is dangerous. And that is one of the very many reasons I won't be supporting this. Padama Yayepi.
Chair Acom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, my colleagues have done a good job highlighting some of the overall concerns with the bill. I found it interesting that even the testifier, Mr. Pearson, shared concerns about the amendment and the impacts from the bill. I think that as we look at the programs that we've developed that are being eliminated, it certainly makes it a challenging, makes it easy to not support. Maybe I should put it that way. I think that Representative Buck did a nice job talking about the importance of the RDA. And when you talk about the data centers being the fourth industrial revolution, I think is what you said. Many of the decisions that we made last year and some of the protections that we put in place to ensure that data centers would be, paying their fair share. And as we need to be achieving our 2040 clean energy goals, and the RDA is such an important tool to learn about new technologies, whether that's geothermal, whether it's long-term storage, many other things that we talk about, the ammonia program. There are so many important projects that come through that help us as a state and help us as a, society move forward, not backwards. So I think that going into the details of all of this is probably not worth the time. I think there are so many things here to argue. The hole in the general fund, the reduction of important standards around energy efficiency, and I'm kind of at a loss for words, actually, with the whole bill. So maybe I'll just in short say I have some real concerns about the bill. I would like to request a roll call, and with that, I will let other members speak. So thank you, Mr.
Roll
Chair.
call has been requested. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of my colleagues have said a lot of the things that I was thinking about saying. The money side of this, it seems like giving a large amount of money, 100+ million, to large companies with the hope that they'll pass some of that on top of blowing this hole in our general fund where we're going to cut money for our kids, for healthcare. So those things concern. But Chair Swedzinski, there is something that you said that I actually very much agree with. The amount of energy we're going to need to be producing needs to go way up. Yes, it's going to. We are going to have to build out systems, grow more generation, absolutely. We've heard before in this committee earlier, but the cheapest form of new electricity is renewable stuff. So I'm with you on that. I think there's one really flaw at the core of your argument that you make about we need to let the market do this and get out of the way and let the market do this. We're talking about a situation where the utilities are monopoly providers. This is not the free market. The way it works is we grant them a monopoly and then we regulate them to make sure that the public good is at the center of what they do. So I just want to point that out, that I think that's a flaw in this, and I'll be against it. Thank you.
Chair Swedzinski, do you have any closing comments about your bill?
Well, certainly. I think I appreciate a good, robust debate on this. And, as we're going, whether this bill passes out of committee or not, it seems like we might be a little on the thin side. But it's important to remember that this legislature does play a part when it comes to energy costs. The costs aren't simply generated between the utility and their customer and the PUC. We have a big part to play when it comes to energy rates here in the state of Minnesota. And, as this bill potentially moves forward, this bill will save ratepayers billions of dollars. Billions. And that's by the legislature simply getting out of the way and allow electricity to be generated, transferred, and sold to the end customer with government out of the way, by allowing property taxes to be lower, by allowing the fees on casts to be lower or eliminated. And, if, to Representative Buck's comment, if the cast taxes would actually be as an incentive to get rid of the casks, I think we could make that argument. But those things are largely out of our hands as state lawmakers. If we could take our hands and snap our fingers and the cast would be in Yucca Mountain or some other place, I think we'd all agree that we would snap our fingers and do that. But there is no incentive within the RDA, there is no incentive within the taxes upon the casts that are there to incentivize the removal from the state. They are simply a tax on casts that are held hostage essentially within our borders by inaction from the federal government. And I believe we're the only state in the union that adds cost to ratepayers by taxing them. And I think that is just the minutia of a conversation, that the research wouldn't happen without those funds. I believe that they will. At the end of the day, who pays for it? Is it state taxpayers or is it Excel ratepayers? And I believe that we have a role to play, that if we would like to create an account that everyone pays into to spend money out of to do this research, that's fine. But the idea that we're creating an account that puts a heavy load and a heavy burden on a small amount of ratepayers within the state to create an essential piggy bank to do projects that we would like, I think that's a disservice to those ratepayers. And I would ask for a green vote today. Thank you.
Chair Swedzinski renews his motion that House File 4308 as amended be referred to the Committee on Taxes. A roll having been requested, the Committee Legislative Assistant Sharon will take the roll.
Chair Swedzinski.
Aye.
Chair Acom.
No.
Vice Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kraft.
No.
Representative Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Representative Baker. Representative Buck.
No.
Representative Carroll.
No.
Representative Hollins. Representative Igo.
No.
Representative Jones.
Jones, no.
Representative Lugar Nikolai.
No.
Representative Mahamud.
No.
Representative Mekeland. Yes. Representative Sexton.
Yes.
Representative Weiner.
Yes.
There being 7 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not pass, or the bill does not pass. Representative Igo moves the House File 4703 be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Representative Igo, would you like to move the A1 amendment?
You're not moving fast enough.
You're rushing me up
I'd
here,
like to
Mr.
move
Chair.
faster.
Yes, I would like to move the, well, one, can we move the bill first, Mr. Chair?
That'd be fine.
Okay, so if we could move House File 4703 to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Sounds good. Please tell us about, do you want to move the amendment next now?
Now
then?
we'll move the amendment,
Okay.
yes. If I can move the A1 amendment on House File 4703.
Representative Igo moves the A1 amendment to get the bill in the shape he would like. Is there any discussion about the A1?
And Mr. Chair, I'll just explain, all I'm doing is inserting a dollar amount there on line 1.7 for $1 million out of the RDA.
Are there any questions on the A1 amendment for the bill author? Representative Igo, I understand you have an oral amendment also? No, is that it? Oh, we'll take a vote on the A1. All in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The amendment passes. Representative Igo, to your bill.
So, Mr. Chair, if we could, I have to do an interesting oral amendment because of the other body that I cannot name. So I've worked with Mr. Eliff on it. And if the ask is if we could go to line 1.11 of the bill and change June to January, so we fall in line with what's going on over there. I
Is
think
there
that should
any,
be pretty easy. If, I don't know if House Research wants to explain it or anything, but if that's allowable by the committee, that'd be greatly appreciated.
maybe Mr. Iliff would repeat the A1, the oral amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 1, line 11, delete June and insert January.
Do members understand the amendment? All in favor of the oral amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Your oral amendment passes. Would you like to tell us about your bill?
I would be happy to now, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you, members, and thank you for humoring me on that oral amendment. I greatly appreciate it. So what we have in front of us today is a, simply put, nuclear study bill. We've had lots of conversations on nuclear energy in this committee about its benefits, about things we're learning about it, our concerns about it. And I took a lot of the conversations I've had with not only my friends on both sides of the aisle and went, okay, let's work on something that gets us to a point where the state can move in the right direction. The bill in front of us today is months of collaboration and understanding and learning from each other about moving in the right direction so we can move together as Republicans and Democrats on this issue, looking out for the future of energy policy in the state of Minnesota. So the study is very straightforward. It's 2 pages. And really what it goes through is it's going to go through everything from regulations on the federal side. It's going to get into technological advances, costs. It's going to evaluate economic benefits. It's going to talk about environmental stuff. It's going to talk about waste storage. It's going to talk about public health. And it's going to be a full encompassing report that needs to be on our desks in the legislature next year by February 1st. So what I was doing when I was doing my own research before we got to the study is I looked at states around us, states like South Dakota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, looked at kind of how their studies worked and kind of brought a bunch of things together. But the real reason we have such a good bill in front of us today is I just want to thank the Prairie Island Indian community for their partnership on this issue. Once we were working on the bill last year, I really worked to develop a relationship, and I want to thank the entire council and that community. I went down there in January and spent some time with council, and this is where this bill started. Was working together on that, and we went back and forth and cleaned it up, and now on the last day before deadline, we have a bill ready to present to the committee and to start moving the state of Minnesota forward on learning more about what nuclear could bring to the state of Minnesota. So I'm very thankful for the partnership and the collaboration, not only with Prairie Island, but with the Minnesota Nuclear Alliance as well, which has brought in folks from labor, folks from our communities, folks from nonprofits, environmental groups. And this is one of those rare bills where you don't have Republicans pushing it, you don't have Democrats pushing it. It's the people of Minnesota. They're saying we're ready to learn more and take a step towards what nuclear could look like in the state of Minnesota, and if it should be a fit in the state of Minnesota for lowering costs, providing economic benefits, and trying to lift up the state of Minnesota. But with that, I know I have some testifiers, and I'd love to give them the chance to talk about this bill.
Thank you, Representative Igo, for the explanation of your bill. And we do have a list of folks that have come to testify. We have Blake Johnson from the Prairie Island Indian Community. Blake, would you please come to the table, introduce yourself for the record?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Blake Johnson, Government Relations for the Prairie Island Indian Community and also a tribal member. First, I would like to thank Representative Igo for his engagement with our tribe on House File 4703, as well as meeting with Tribal Council to seek to understand our historic and ongoing relationship with nuclear energy and our community and cultural values. Tribal Council really appreciates that engagement. As we discussed this proposal, there were several elements of the study that were important to Prairie Island, including the analysis of new waste created as well as long-term storage, any potential effects on surrounding communities and local community acceptance, and environmental impacts. House File 4703 contains these items, and therefore we support the bill. I just want to say thank you again for giving me the time to speak, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the testifier? Just stay around in case there are some later on. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And we'll also have Joel Johnson from the Legislative Director of IBEW State Council. You'd introduce yourself to the committee and state your name, please.
Chair Swedzinski, members of the committee. My name is Joel Johnson, and I'm here on behalf of the IBEW State Council, which represents over 16,000 electrical workers from around the state, including thousands of current and retired workers who have safely worked at the Monticello and Prairie Island nuclear plants for the past 50-plus years. These are great jobs with great pay and benefits and meaningful work. Essentially, these plants have provided the backbone of the region's electrical grid. And these plants have also provided thousands of hours of work for other building and construction trades during construction, planned outages, and maintenance. Representative Igo, we would like to thank you again for your persistence, openness, and leadership with this bill. We also appreciate the Prairie Island community, which rightfully is and should continue to be at the center of this discussion. We really appreciate your willingness to engage on this issue and help push this forward. The IBEW wishes we were lifting the nuclear moratorium this session, but we recognize this study as an important first step. It's widely accepted that demand for electricity is going to skyrocket in the coming years, and that the electric grid will be one of the primary drivers of our economy. It's important that we get this right. Add in the closure of the state's largest power plants over the next few years, and it's clear we're going to need some type of full-time, fully dispatchable baseload source of generation to maintain balance on the grid. Energy storage, carbon capture, hydrogen are possibilities, but still far from sure things. If we're going to reach our carbon-free goals by 2040, we need to start figuring out how to do it now. That's why the deadlines are so important in this bill. The timely completion of the study isn't a guarantee that a nuclear plant will be built in the state. It's our hope it will provide a roadmap for utilities interested in nuclear generation, and more importantly, for the communities interested in hosting a plant. There is some urgency to this as well. Planning for a new plant, working through environmental issues and review, siting, arranging for financing and construction. All of this takes years and years for a conventional plant. For a nuclear plant, it's even longer, easily a decade or more. So I urge you to support the bill. This is an important issue and one we don't have the time to ignore. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Johnson? Just stick around just in case. Thank you. Next on the list, we have Philip Holt from Generation Atomic. If you'd come to the table and introduce yourself for the committee.
Thank you to the chair and members of this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Philip Holt, and I am representing Generation Atomic as part of the Minnesota Nuclear Energy Alliance. Generation Atomic is an environmental nonprofit proudly based here in Minnesota, though our work does extend across the nation. For over a decade, our bread and butter has been engaging communities, educating the public, and discussing nuclear's inclusion as part of a broader energy transition. We are here because we all share a goal: achieving a reliable, affordable, and carbon-free electrical system in Minnesota by 2040. Let's recall that this growing energy demand is not new, nor the result merely of data centers. It was already expected with electrification of transportation, EVs, heat pumps, and with broader industrial growth and part of our electrify everything goal. We believe that nuclear power is in fact a tool worth evaluating as part of meeting that challenge. We believe HF 4703 is the next best step to continuing that work. Over the past few years, we have heard and encouraged people to be nuclear curious. This bill represents an opportunity to tickle that curiosity. Across the country, many other states are moving forward with nuclear power. An article published just this week by Canary Media, a leading environmental publisher, tells the story clearly. 5 states have lifted their moratoriums outright. Even states like California are recognizing the need for existing and new nuclear and are likely to end their ban this session. Here in Minnesota, we have heard the question, but who's asking for that here in the state? Today, that answer is much clearer. With the testifiers you hear today, we know labor is asking, utilities are asking, environmentalists are asking, and our communities are asking. Just yesterday, a representative from Sherburne County said plainly, we would be happy to host nuclear power in Sherburne County. These are not abstract voices. These are Minnesotans who want to plan their future, and they want us to explore all the options to do so. These conversations did not happen by accident. They are the result of real stakeholder engagement, work that this legislature has asked us for. We have engaged across the state to better understand the needs and move this conversation forward in good faith. In that regard, I must add my thanks to the Prairie Island Indian community for their ongoing, honest, deliberative, and sincere participation in the work we're doing. That engagement matters, and this bill reflects that work. I also want to thank Representative Igo for your continuing advocacy in this space and for making sure this engagement continues to happen. This study bill seeks to answer the questions, the outstanding questions Minnesotans are asking about the role that nuclear energy can play in our state. Today, we ask the committee to support that effort, to help us and continue this conversation and join us in supporting 4703. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Holt? All right, thank you. You could maybe hang out there since we have another seat on the other side. We have Derek Moe with the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. Please introduce yourself for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Derek Moe, the President and CEO of the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. I'm also here to testify on behalf of the Minnesota Nuclear Energy Alliance and in support of this bill, which we certainly appreciate being heard here today. The Nuclear Alliance is an organization that started coming into existence a little over a year ago and has now grown to an organization of over 60 stakeholder groups on a very bipartisan basis to work for lifting the nuclear moratorium. And we believe that this bill represents a major step forward in continuing to work on this issue. This group includes a lot of labor groups, which we just heard from Mr. Johnson about. It includes also environmental groups. Generation Atomic has talked about some of the priorities that those folks have in terms of reducing carbon. It includes counties. Sherburne County was just referenced, testified yesterday. There's a letter in your record from it saying they would like to host. And in fact, in the last several months, we've had over 20 counties join the coalition, the alliance, in order to express their support. And I think one of the nice things about this bill, the way it's structured, is it will allow an opportunity for those local communities to further investigate the pros and cons of hosting nuclear facilities in those communities. And of course, it includes utilities, such as the rural electric cooperatives, that recognize that in order to meet the state's goals in carbon and keep the power grid reliable, we simply must have nuclear energy available as an alternative in the mix to do that. If we do not have, every year that we don't have nuclear energy available to go out in the planning cycle, there will be more gas planned. That's the simple consequence of doing that. And then we will have RECs that are purchased to cover that up. Because while there will be big additions in solar and wind, has been and will continue to be, we also must have resources available that extend to all hours and all weather conditions. And so we really would see nuclear as an important resource in order to be able to move that agenda forward. And of course, would like to thank Representative Igo for his very hard work on this, for his work, especially in conjunction with the Prairie Island Indian community. I think we are very respectful and grateful of their work on this study effort, and their support is very meaningful, and we'd love to continue that dialogue and coordination. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Moe? All right. Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify for or against House File 4703 as amended? If you'd like to go to the testifiers table and introduce yourselves. Is there more? Are both of you thinking about it or just one of you? Okay. All right. If you could be fairly tight with your remarks, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. I'll let you guys choose who goes first.
He stood first.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is John Johnson. I'm a county commissioner in Itasca County, Itasca County houses one of our power plants and is an economic or an energy transition community. So to start out with, I would like to thank Representative Igo and the Prairie Island community for their leadership on this issue. When you're in an energy transition community and our entire county will be affected economically by that transition, there's a lot of uncertainty that comes along. And I'm very inspired by the leadership on this issue because it is a very difficult issue to talk about. I'm thankful that an opportunity is here in HF 4703 to do a study and to make an informed decision and recommendation. When it comes to nuclear energy, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to live all over the world. And there are best practices all throughout the globe that come along with nuclear energy production. So I sincerely hope that this committee will find it appropriate to support HF 4703 and take the next step to potentially making an informed decision on behalf of the residents of Minnesota to help us control our energy costs and to provide consistent, reliable energy to our residents because we need that. There are a lot of emerging markets that take care of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the committee?
Yeah, my name is Gary Gray. I'm a Sherburne County Commissioner from District 4. I represent the western half of Sherburne County, the city of St. Cloud. Sherburne County's been known as the energy county for quite a while, and we currently have Circo Solar has over 1,000 megawatts of power there. And we're hosting major production facilities in Sherburne County to significant transmission, distribution infrastructure, both electricity and gas, utilized by 5 dynamic energy providers spanning multiple cooperatives and regulated utilities. We are home to the first nuclear power plant generating facility with Elk River Atomic Reactor, which was commissioned in 1963 and was the first commercial nuclear reactor operated by a rural cooperative in the United States. Finally, Minnesota's nuclear power plant just across the river in Monticello. We continue to support safe and reliable nuclear power generation in Minnesota through emergency preparedness activities, mutual assistance, planning, and regional coordination. We joined the Nuclear Alliance in August of 2025 unanimously as our board, and as such, we are supportive of House File 4703 as a necessary first step for Minnesota to take evaluating the efficiency of nuclear power generation as part of the state's evolving approach to meeting both current and future needs. In doing so, Sherburne County pledges to be a reliable and willing partner with the state of Minnesota, cognizant that we build similar past, present, and hopefully future in the use of reliance upon safe, clean, and reliable nuclear energy. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else that would like to quickly speak in favor or against Representative Igo's bill? Seeing none, members' questions. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, thank you, Representative Igo. You've done a lot of work on this, a lot of work with the Prairie Island community, and I really appreciate it. It seems like you're trying to do this in the right way, so I really appreciate that. A few things that I would say is, first, where did you come up with the $1 million? I think I remember this bill a few years ago and it being proposed at that time quite a bit less than that. It seems like a lot for a study.
Representative Igo, is it Trump's tariffs? Oh, sorry.
Wait, did someone write that down? I'm going to clip it. I'm going to clip it. Oh, wait.
Mr. Chair, Representative Kraft, you are right. In the past, we've seen the bill study anywhere between $250,000 to $450,000. I put $1 million in as a placeholder while we try to iron out that solid number. If the bill is going to Ways and Means, we'll probably amend it there to have a solid amount. We just wanted to make sure we could cover it and then we wouldn't hit a hiccup upon passage that they wouldn't have enough money to finish this thing.
Representative Kraft, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Swedzinski, Mr. Chair.
I deserve that.
So, you know, and I've said before, I'm nuclear curious, and I've dug into this quite a bit. There's a few concerns I would raise. One would be this is an RDA bill. Last year, we were not able to do an RDA bill out of this committee. And so I'm not that interested in subverting the process that we typically do with an RDA bill. I'd like to see this dealt with within the context of what we normally do with this, where we pull together a number of proposals and we come out with a RDA proposal from the House. So that's how I think this should be dealt with. So in that case, I'm not in favor of sending this on. I think we should be sticking to our process. I would be interested in working with you a bit more on this. There's a couple things that I think that are missing from here on nuclear side. One is the time that it would take to develop a new nuclear facility and the expense. I don't see those things called out in here, and I'm just reading through, so I don't see this. I think that's a key part. As I said, I've been nuclear curious, but what I see is that new nuclear in this country takes an incredibly long amount of time and costs quite a bit of money. There are some interesting new technologies, none of which have yet been built in this country. And so while I do think there is need for a technology that can provide firm, dispatchable energy in the future, I think nuclear is one of the options. There are others, such as, in some parts of the country, deep geothermal, better transmission, long duration storage, even green hydrogen. So there are a number of things. So the other thing I would have is an evaluation of nuclear this relative to some of those other technologies that I would like seeing in such a study. So as I said, I appreciate the work that you've done on this. Though, as I said, I'm open to continuing that, but I don't like the process we're setting here, so I'm not going to vote to send this on.
I don't think there was a question there, Representative Igo.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could respond.
You'd like to
some of
reply?
those things.
Okay.
Yeah, so first off, thank you, Representative Kraft. I want to address the RDA question first, because, so this is the way I'm evaluating it, and we're as legislators, we get to create precedent. This issue is one that was written by one of the communities where the RDA came from, and we're working together in collaboration with it. What I don't want to see happen to it is it turn into a political football. So that's why I'm asking to move it to Ways and Means today, so that we as a committee can make that motion that this work is done in collaboration. And if we move it, I'm still down to work with you on all the other stuff and add language in Ways and Means. I just don't want to see this get hung up on May 16th and it plays politics and it doesn't happen because of other things that we're going to be negotiating in this room, because this is something that we're working on in a bipartisan way with every different group in our state. So that's to address your first part about the RDA process. On the cost and expense part, open to language ideas you might have. It gets really tricky, right? Because if we talk about the nuclear facilities that they're building down in Georgia, the first one cost X and then right after it was 40% less, right? Even as the study would progress, costs would change, and when we would get a report that would give us antiquated data, and even that evaluation, right? So like, I'm sure you wouldn't like if we compared the study with what solar cost 20 years ago versus what solar costs now. So I'm down to work and find the language there, but notice that when we put those hard numbers in, it's going to be a change on sliding scale. Technology gets better, development gets better, research gets better. So,
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Igo, yes. I would agree with you that it's difficult to forecast stuff. One of the challenges historically with nuclear is it hasn't gotten cheaper over time. It's gotten more costly and it's taken longer. So I think the study should deal with that and should say why, what are the assumptions here, why this time it's going to be different. Your point about solar has dropped in price consistently since it was first come out. And you can forecast that. You can look at, if anything, the forecasts have undershot the costs over and over again with solar. So that would be my comment to you. So thanks.
All right, next on the list, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd first like to call for a roll call on this bill.
All right, roll call being called. We'll do a roll call.
Thank you. And then, thank you, Representative Igo, for bringing this bill. I echo a lot of what others have said. I really appreciate the process that you've taken, the thoughtfulness on this bill. I am equally so nuclear curious and appreciate the good faith engagement with stakeholders that you've had. I think that's really important for the future of this. I also want to say I appreciate your argument regarding the RDA. However, I do think because that is the main bucket of funding that this committee can allocate, I do think it's important that we take kind of a holistic view of of how we utilize that funding. And so that's part of my thinking process on this bill as well. I would generally say too that I didn't see it in your bill, but would really like to see spelled out criteria around the length of time to build new nuclear plants as well as the cost. I think that is critical, and to make comparisons to other potential energy generation sources. And then lastly, so yeah, I just have comments, no questions really. But the last one is to study and really look at whether shareholders should assume the risk of building new nuclear plants. I think that's something that we we are legislators who then guide the regulators on this, and we really have to keep the ratepayers in mind. And so, as the further thinking goes on this, we need to think about like what has happened in Georgia and I believe South Carolina, these other places where nuclear plants have been attempted, and what has happened there, what have been the implications to ratepayers. So that's all I have on this. But again, thank you for bringing this bill.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Just to speak to the cost side, whether it's being addressed or not in the study, Mr. Eliff, would you like to speak to that as nonpartisan staff? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to point out that cost is taken into account in Representative Igo's bills, and there's a required analysis of several aspects of costs in here. For example, lines 114 to 115 require the study to examine technological advances made with respect to conventional nuclear-powered facilities that affect safety and cost. On line 1.20, with respect to small modular reactors, there's a line that requires estimated costs of those reactors. On page 2, at line 2.14, where we're talking about radioactive waste, the study requires an estimate of the costs of on-site storage, and on line 2.17, also the feasibility and cost of reprocessing nuclear waste.
Thank you, Mr. Eloff, for clearing up whether or not the study was going to address that. Thank you. Who do we have next? Sorry. Representative Wiener.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Spencer, Representative Igo, for bringing this forward. They say that the wheels of government turn slowly, and this nuclear moratorium has been in our state since '94, give or take. I think that's more than slowly, that's snail's pace, that's obscenely slow. You made a point, and this was something I'd like to hit on, I guess, is politics, or the political football getting kicked back and forth. We have a responsibility to our constituents to make decisions here. And when we kick the ball down the road, when we pass it back and forth, or when we use it for political leverage, who suffers when that happens? There was a comment made about the ratepayers, and that's exactly what happens. Our lowest income families carry a larger percentage of their income when it comes to energy. And here we are, once again, looking at the opportunity to move something forward, and we're discussing it, which could have a huge impact on the people that need help most. So, and I think one of the testifiers said it, I would much rather be voting on a lifting of the nuclear moratorium than a study. But here we are again talking about a bill just to get something moved forward, just to lift the moratorium on a facility or a potential facility that's going to be 10 to 15 years down the road. So thank you for bringing this forward, but I hope this spurs action. Because how much longer can we really spend playing political football with a subject, with a topic that needs to be addressed, should have been addressed a number of years ago? So thank you, Spencer, for bringing this forward. Look forward, if I'm on the Energy Committee in the future, to be voting yes on lifting the moratorium.
Representative Buck.
Madam, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Representative Igo. Almost called you Spencer because he just did. That was crazy.
It's fine.
First, thank you for working with my tribe on this. And I just wanted to put on the record that I did send, it was only like 2 hours ago or something, so I'm surprised it's not in here. No, I sent you some things that I had received from others who thought would be potential things to add to this. So I hope that we can talk offline and work on adding some other things and making sure that I understand what you mean by all this stuff, because having lived there on the reservation and experiencing the mental toll that it takes to live so close, I want to make sure that those things are also included. So Padama Yepi, thank you, and that's all I have.
All right, Representative Baker, any quick questions?
Yes.
Chair, if I could respond to that, just briefly.
Representative
I just-
Igo.
Thank you, Representative Buck, for the email. That's actually what I was like scribbling on there like crazy. I was trying to cross-reference the stuff you sent me and see where it fits in, so happy to meet offline and work on that together.
All right, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I think Representative Weiner kind of said a lot of what I was going to say, in that if you're not voting in favor of this to move at least on to the next committee, you're not serious about the 2040 carbon-free mandate. That's the bottom line. You have done everything, Representative Igo, that you can do to bring it to this level. I came into this discussion today sort of thinking, I'm frustrated because we got to spend $1 million on a study, up to, not finalized yet, because we don't trust each other. So maybe a study is something that we need to do. Then when I see that our friends at the Prairie Island community is behind this, I am like, there we go. That's what we needed to do. That was that piece in the valley we really needed to do. And it was because of your leadership that got us here. And if the folks are getting wrapped around the axles because of process and the RDA fund, this one particular item is all by itself. It should be a standalone thing anyway. And we should be able to move this thing forward, and everybody should have their own voice in this own matter. Do the right thing today. This is important, but it gets us moving, but we are never going to get there if we keep punting the ball down the road. We just aren't going to get there. Get it out of this committee today, at least, members, and we can keep talking about it. But thank you for your work on this. I really do hope that we have some real leadership shown today by moving this thing forward, and I appreciate all of the partners that you brought together to show us the support today. Thank you.
All right, Representative Acom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For those of you who've been around the Energy Committee for a little while, you'll probably not be surprised that I am not nuclear's biggest fan. What I do appreciate, though, is the feelings from Prairie Island Indian community, and they have always been kind of our guiding light or guiding star on how we look at nuclear given their proximity. So their support of the bill and the study certainly has impact on me. That said, I have some concerns with the bill in terms of some of the specifics. Thank you, Mr. Eloff, for talking about the costs that are included. I do think there are other costs that are not included or specifically listed. And I think in terms of that, how this nuclear generation might compare to other costs of electric generation. So comparing it to other forms would be an important aspect to be looking at. I think that we as a legislature have gotten away from naming who's going to be working on things. And so I think I would encourage that we have an RFP process to determine, rather than calling out in the language who is actually doing the study. So I think that might be a change. I hope you would be open to those kinds of changes. I think in terms of the RDA, I do believe that we need to have the conversation in totality. And so it would be my hope that we could lay this over today and have the conversation about some of the changes. I think it sounds like we're moving in a direction where we have almost, I would say, close. I don't want to jinx it by saying unanimous, but looks like we're working in a direction where we can all support this. And so I think I don't support moving bills out of committee that are not ready to move out. And I think there is some work yet to do here. And I think in looking at it with the RDA. So with that, it would be my hope that we could lay this bill over today.
Representative Igo.
So I'll just, if I could respond to that, Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Akam, I guess maybe the thing I could make then is I'm fine laying the bill over today if we can commit to this being a standalone bill. Because I think the issue with how much collaboration and partnership that's happened, I think it'd be a show of good faith that this bill has its time in the sun alone to show what work this does when you do the things the right way. That's what I just heard from testifiers. That's what I heard from both sides of the aisle today. Otherwise, I think we should take a vote.
Representative Akam.
I'll just respond to that, I appreciate that offer. I think the important thing is that we give the bill the energy or the effort that it needs to get it in the place it's in. If that comes about in next week or the week after where it's ready to go and we have agreement about how we're going to handle the RDA, then I'm happy to have that conversation. I'm not going to commit to that today, but I'm happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Chair Akam. And if it's any consolation, I am absolutely willing to work over our Easter break on
Oh, I didn't mean that.
creating creating a good, robust conversation on RDA spending, whether that's rate relief, whether that's projects, or a combination of the two. You know, it is very rare that this committee has been able to put together a coalition of leaders across a spectrum of ideas. When I think about environmental groups, when I think of rural utilities, when I think of Centers for the American Experiment, and I think of other organizations and unions coming together with the understanding of the impact and the importance, and most importantly, the engagement of the Prairie Island Indian community. We have heard over and over and over in this committee about the importance of engaging folks that are most impacted. And while we can't go back in time and undo the investment that was done on Prairie Island, potentially without the engagement of the Prairie Island community, this bill has done the work. While we can disagree on where the money comes from for the study itself, it is my understanding that Representative Igo is willing to make the changes to make the comfort of this bill before it is passed to the floor with as much massaging as possibly can be done more to that. Am I understanding with that, Mr. Representative Igo?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
All right. You know, we have an opportunity to do something that is not getting rid of the moratorium. This bill does not do that. This bill does not tell us and prescript where and when or why it should be built. It is simply to explore the idea of what that could potentially look at. California is poised to get rid of their moratorium. 4 other states. Folks, we have a chance to do something that's right. We have something to do to recognize honest, solid coalition building, not done in the dark of night, but done in the public square. That's a beautiful thing. And for that, the clerk will take the roll.
Swedzinski,
Aye. Oh,
Akam.
stop. Would you have any closing comments?
I was just going to make a couple, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I was trying to steal a little.
I didn't want to interrupt the chair. That's in bad form.
No.
Members, thank you for the discussion. I wanted to say I've given my word to a lot of people how I was going to work on this issue, and I give my word to this committee that I will meet you in the middle and we'll work on this language, because that is the way we're going to do this. We're going to do it right, because that's the only way we're going to get nuclear to move forward in the state is if we do it right. So I wanted to give that commitment, emphasize what the chair just said, that this is a study. We're not permitting anything. We're not making anything happen, but we're at least going to start opening the door to learn about what it looks like for Minnesota. So that's my commitment to you as members and to the coalition partners in this room and to everyone that's been a part of this bill. Thank you for your consideration, members.
The motion to re-refer the bill to Ways and Means. You'd like to renew your motion?
I'll re-renew my motion, Mr. Chair.
All right. The clerk will take the roll.
Swedzinski,
Aye.
Akam,
No.
Murphy, Kraft,
No.
Anderson,
Anderson, aye.
Baker, Buck,
Abstain.
Carroll. No. Hollins. Igo.
Aye.
Jones.
Jones, no.
Luger Nikolai.
No.
Mahamud.
No.
Mekeland. Sexton.
Yes.
Weiner.
With there being 8 ayes and 6 nays, the bill does not have the votes to move out of committee. Thank you for your bill, Representative Igo. All right. We are going to mix our agenda up just really quick because we have some testifiers that have traveled a long way to be here. If that's all right, Co-Chair. We're going to just bring Representative Mekeland up for your bill. We're going to be laying this bill over as well so that we can get to our testifiers through. So Representative Mekeland, if you'd introduce your bill, and if you are on cue to testify with Representative Mekeland, please feel free to join him at the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move House File 4153, and I have a few oral amendments to kind of go through. We just got to flip-flop 2 words.
It sounds good. Representative Mekeland, to your amendment, please move your amendment.
Okay, I'm going to move the following oral amendment. Page 2, line 20, delete the first section and insert subdivision.
All right.
Then on page 3, line 18, delete subdivision and insert section. If anybody has any questions, Mr. Eloff can explain.
Mr. Eloff, would you like to just repeat those changes, those oral amendments from Representative Mekeland?
Page 2, line 20, delete the first section and insert subdivision. Page 3, line 18, delete subdivision and insert section.
Does everyone on the committee understand the oral amendments from Representative Mekeland? As Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask House Research, does that work? Is it cool? What's the impact? Yeah.
Mr. Eloff, what's the impact of those oral amendments?
Mr. Chair, Representative Kraft, the impact is to get it right. That makes sense.
And in the shape that whatever. All right, sounds good. All in favor of the oral amendments from Representative Mekeland, as stated by Mr. Eloff, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The oral amendments stand. Representative Mekeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this bill is it came out of a conversation. Chair Acom and I had the privilege of speaking in a conference for MNCEA. And through just the whole panel discussion and everything, the thought came up about, I've heard forever since I've been here how bad the coal plant is, and then all of a sudden we have all this negativity towards data centers, and I posed the question to the crowd. It's starting to sound like people are saying that data centers are worse than our coal plant, and the one young lady that was there agreed with me. So out of that, there was also an amendment last year in the other chamber committee hearing where they were going to, by one of the DFL members, that to give the Sherco a carve-out of the then moving data center bill, which through the course of last summer led to an idea with the transitioning communities of all 8 of them, and working with that group. I did sit on that legislative work group for a while, and we're dumping all this money into these 8 host communities. These 8 host communities are desperately trying to find something to backfill their economic loss, and that's where this really derived from. But with that, Mr. Chair, because I know we're getting very short on time, I do have several testifiers if you would like to call them up.
Thank you. Could Mr. Gary Gray and Bruce Massett come to the testifying table? And if you could keep your comments within that 30 seconds to a minute range, you are going to get extra treats from Representative Mekeland, potentially.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Gary Gray. I'm serving as Sherburne County Commissioner, District 4. We are in support of House File 4153. Sherco represents, the coal plant represents 65% of the city of Becker's property tax. It represents 34% of the school district's base tax and 10% of the county tax. Our early efforts to try and secure data centers was brought on by Google, which the state provided $20 million for the extension of the business park in Becker. We're currently right next to that business park. Amazon and Microsoft have secured property for this. We are Sadly, we're sweeping data legislation effectively wiped out the viability for these data centers. In a nutshell, last year's legislation erased a decade's worth of work previous commissioners and the city of Becker have put together to put data centers around the coal plant. We currently are 2 existing data centers. Both are in Sherburne County. One is Target Corporation and United Health. We do not have a problem with data centers in Sherburne County. Currently, the pros and cons of all the economics and the environmental issues of it. We look at the data centers that would be a net increase or not any increase in water usage at all because of what the current property is being used for. The energy transition communities want to continuously seek assistance from the state of Minnesota. We'd rather complete our transition away from old energy generation facilities by developing our commercial industrial sectors and rebuilding our lost property tax base. But we cannot accomplish this with the entire industries are eliminated from the consideration. Exemption from this new legislation is a reasonable request, which will not only benefit our transitioning communities, but also advance the state's energy and economic development goals and objectives. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Massat, if you'd introduce yourself for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bruce Messelt. I serve as the administrator for Sherburne County. In respectful of your time, I'll keep comments very short. Really, the focus of this bill is to address the energy transition communities, not the state as a whole, with respect to the data center legislation. Several of the communities were in work with the support of the state at looking at redevelopment, not new development, of antiquated energy sites for data centers. It's almost an ideal use if you think about a heavy industrial site like Sherco that's not around residential area. It replaces water usage used by Sherco or by area farm fields, so there's no net increase in water utilization, and it has a willing energy provider. So for a decade, with the state's assistance of over $20 million, that's exactly what we've been doing. Unfortunately, the legislation really didn't address the redevelopment concepts within these very limited number of communities. This bill simply would do that. It would address and recognize only those communities that were on this path. Not all of them are going to have data centers for other reasons, but at least it would allow us to finish the work that you asked us to do a decade ago when Sherco closed. And that's all we're asking. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, could we get Mr. Kohlberger and Sanders to come? And then if one person ends and you know you're on the list, go fill that person's spot. Thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the committee, thank you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chair Swedzinski, Chair Acom, committee members. My name is Mark Kobinger. I'm the mayor of Becker, and I want to thank Representative Mekeland for authoring House File 4153. He's been a great advocate for us. When Sherco came to our community in the 1970s, our community, including my dad, welcomed them with open arms. When others suffered from the NIMBY syndrome, Becker charted a new course with the PIMBY syndrome, please in my backyard. Now my community is faced with the loss of the Sherco plant, hundreds of jobs, 70% of our city tax base, a full third of our schools tax base, and we've been searching for a decade for bipartisan solutions. 9 years ago, we thought we had one with the natural gas generating plant signed by Governor Dayton, a bipartisan agreement that would have really helped us. We lost that. We kind of feel like that political football that was discussed a little bit earlier. It's been said Becker has the most ideal physical location for a data center in the entire United States. I not only believe that for the reasons Administrator Messelt talked about, we also have the local expertise to be able to do this. We've been hosting heavy industrial partners, businesses since the 1970s, from the Sherco plant to the Northern Metals recycling plant, which is the most environmentally friendly recycling plant on the face of the earth. We value our tax base. We're here looking for help. We also value our natural resources, 300 acres of parkland, the Mississippi and Elk Rivers. We're simply here asking for some help. We're willing to do the hard work. We're just asking for a chance. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sanders and Mr. Johnson, if you'd make your way to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Jacob Sanders, and I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Becker. I appreciate the committee giving me the opportunity to speak in support of this bill that Representative Mekeland has presented. which provides Becker and other transition communities that invested substantial time, effort, and resources into positioning themselves for data center development, which is an essential step towards our long-term stability as a community. In partnership with local, state, county, and regional stakeholders, Becker has made attracting large-scale site users, particularly data centers, a central strategy for maintaining economic stability as the Sherco power plant undergoes decommissioning. We've taken a proactive approach in creating a strong environment for major site development by completing an alternative urban area-wide review, collaborating with Xcel Energy on a joint master plan for their property, and undertaking a multi-year overhaul of our zoning code. These efforts balance community and environmental priorities while making Becker more development ready. A recurring concern I've heard is that cities our size lack the capacity and expertise to properly analyze and review the impacts of data centers on local resources and communities. In Becker's case, I believe the opposite is true. Despite our small size, we're exceptionally resourceful. Over the past decade, we have worked directly with 3 major hyperscale companies and have built deep experience in planning for, evaluating, and strategizing around development. While Minnesota offers many advantages for data centers, the layers of regulatory and statutory requirements have added to uncertainty on timing and siting these developments, reducing the competitiveness of Minnesota in this sector. This has directly affected Becker's ability to replace the tax base and jobs that will be lost as the plant is decommissioned. City of Becker is grateful again to Representative Mekeland for introducing the bill, which would remove the layer of complexity from data center development process in Becker and provide a much needed boost to our efforts to secure long-term stability and land a data center. We respectfully urge the committee to approve the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And then if you'd introduce yourself for the committee, and then we could have Mr. Mekeland.
Thank you, Mr.
Mekeland.
Chair. My name is John Johnson. I'm a county commissioner in Itasca County. And as I spoke earlier, I represent District 3 in Itasca County. And in greater Minnesota, a county is a community. So when we talk about an energy transition community, we're really talking about my entire county and neighboring counties. So to have legislation presented and proposed that could help us, not particularly make, but help us offset the significant economic impact we are about to experience in Cohasset at the Clay Boswell plant, I urge this committee to support HF 4153 and do all that they can to help us transition our communities and keep economic viability in our region. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the committee? And then
Mr. Chair and members, Chasen Meckel, Assistant Division Director for Ecological and Water Resources at the DNR. Just want to speak to the provisions in the bill that relate to 103G 265 Subdivision 5. This is the responsibilities of the DNR to provide information assessing the availability of water and any constraints that there might be for a prospective new facility. This language is voluntary. We've only had one company and community take us up so far on this, but they did find it helpful. And I do want to point out that on line 2.15, with regard to the language of a net increase, the total volume of water isn't the only important consideration when evaluating the ability of a water source to meet a project's water use needs. The seasonality, intensity of pumping make a huge difference. I'll illustrate. 100 million gallons of year used over 12 months is very different than 100 million gallons of water used over a period of 2 months. Those are the things that we evaluate. Those are the things that we can help a prospective project understand what the constraints might be, which ultimately in the end slow down a project from moving forward if they find these things out later in time. So we just recommend that the proposed revisions for 103G aren't necessary. It is voluntary, and we hope to be able to provide this service to more prospective businesses and communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Are there any questions for the testifiers that we've had so far? All right, is there anyone from the public that would like to testify for or against Representative Mekeland's 4153? All right. Members, there's also some written testimony in your materials regarding this bill. Are there any questions for Representative Mekeland? All right. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Mekeland for bringing the bill. So I actually now sit on the I actually now sit on the ETAC, Energy Transition Advisory Committee.
Okay.
So I really What's that?
Your mic on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, all right.
I need to be louder? All right.
That's it. There we go.
I'm on the ETAC, so I really sympathize with the transitions that these communities are facing. My concern is that does the reasons for, protecting water that we put into the bill last year, I think they're still there. Are they not?
Representative Mekeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as you heard earlier, the systems that are in place right now are using far more water. The coal plant, I believe, does the coal plant use water as well? Yes, it does. I know the nuclear plant does. So they did all these studies 8 years ago when it was the interest with Google. They did a very comprehensive study back then. Nobody is going to allow anything negative to happen in that regard from the community. I mean, whether it's the county or the city. And if you were to look at how the Sherco plant, where it pulls its water from, it's literally a gallon in, gallon out. They're literally pulling it out of the river. They filter it first. There is conversation about doing a closed loop system so it wouldn't be an ongoing constant use of groundwater or
River water.
body to water. So that could be part of the final solution. But the idea is to take these sites that are being so desperately hit by a forced closure, which wasn't their plan, but not only replace the jobs, but also backfill the economic loss. And when these two came about, because one of them, for 100% for sure at this point, if nothing changes, is completely out. The problem is they're not selling the land actively either, so there's not even the ability to look for something else to backfill this economic loss. And this has been going on for, as Mr. Mekeland said, a decade. And, oh, by the way, I just want to be very clear, Sherburne will host a nuke facility. I hear it all the time from them. And it was an attempt. I mean, I can certainly work with Patty if she's got some things in here. I see I'm getting a really big smile right now. She's looking forward to doing this tomorrow morning, first thing. But this was just going through all these things. I mean, we have been the host to all of your baseload power for decades. And with that all being shut down, as well as Cohasset and several others. And that's where this idea derived from. So are we laying this over now? What are we doing?
Well, we're still taking questions from
Okay.
members.
Well, I don't know how much time we have.
Representative Kraft.
Yeah, so I didn't realize the time. We did just have a pretty major announcement of a data center coming to this state, even with everything we had just done. So I'm a little, hearing what you're saying, I'm trying, having balancing that in my mind with what just happened. So thank you.
Any other questions for Representative Mekeland? All right, Representative Mekeland, would you like to do some closing comments?
I just did.
All right. All right, we will lay House File 4153 over. And members, the next meeting is Tuesday, April 7th. There is no further business unless Representative Aiken wants to meet up next week, just for a little extra. All right, this meeting is adjourned.